Hey guys, welcome to today's video, and today I wanted to take you through all the books that I read in the year at 2020. So to be honest with you, I feel like this has been one of my best reading years ever, not only in the quality of books that I read or my enjoyment of them, but also in how much freedom I give myself to read whatever I want without feeling I'm judged by anyone. I also started this channel, which has been the best journey ever, and I am so excited to see what it brings in the new year. But generally, I've had a great time with books this year. I've given myself the space to take a break if I feel like it, to read a lot if I want to not read at all if I don't want to, and that has been the freedom that I have been lacking for years. I've just been putting myself under a lot of pressure to read whatever the people are reading on Bookstagram, on Booktube, and I always felt that if I'm not reading what they are, I'm falling behind. But I think I've let go of that this year. I've let go of focusing on how many books I read, how many pages I read, and that is such a freeing, such an amazing feeling. But I still like to keep track of the books that I read this year just for the sake of remembering. I tend to have very specific memories related to each book. If I don't, it's pretty sad, and probably means that I didn't really enjoy this book that much. But I usually do, despite how little I might have enjoyed it. So that's just very interesting for me. So anyway, let's just go for the books that I read in 2020. So first of all was Factfulness by Hans Rosling, Olive Rosling, and Anna Rosling, which helped me realize how our instincts tend to catastrophize everything that is happening around us to detect anything that might threaten us in any way. But in reality, our world is actually making a lot of improvements, a lot of changes to the well-being of the people, and it was a very insightful and eye-opening book. Next up was Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson, which is a YA thriller based in a school for very talented and smart kids, following a girl who's trying to solve a murder mystery from a few decades ago. Next up was Vander by Jessica Hansen, which is book 2 in the Evermore series, which is one of my favorite books of all time, in which we follow a girl who has been her whole life blamed for every single bad thing that has been happening in the world around her. But on the day of her birthday, when she's meant to die, she's actually taken to the magical world of Nevermore, when she can actually finally belong. She takes part in this competition to become part of the Vander Society. We see her grow up, we see her try to find herself, make bonds with other people, and it's just such a comforting and amazing read with an amazing fantasy world to fall in love with. Next up is a book that I read for my Polish class that I nothing really special to say about. I don't even think there's any translation for it, but here it is. It's Tango by this guy, and yeah. Next up we have Fishes by V Schwab, which is an amazing, fast-paced, and intricate book following two characters who are trying to basically kill themselves for something that happened in the past. It's a sort of urban fantasy where any near-death experience can give you some sort of magical power, and it's super interesting. It's a great concept of a fantasy world. The characters are morally gray. It's very, very, very intriguing in terms of like psyche, morality, what's good, what's bad. Very interesting. I'm gonna put him here so he doesn't. Oh my god, my little baby. He'll be fine. Let's just get back into the video. The next book that I read is The Book Thief by Margaret Zuzak, which is an intricate historical fiction following a girl living in World War II in Nazi Germany, following her tales of growing up, of trying to find love and friendship in a brutal, horrible, cruel world. It is narrated by death itself, which adds such a deep layer to this story. It is absolutely poetical, beautiful, and will probably make you cry. Next I read Heartstopper by Alice Oseman, volume 1, 2, and 3, not particularly in the same sort of time frame, but you know, I just read them in general. It's a really comforting, heartwarming, and cute graphic novel series that will take you through the tales of two boys who are falling in love with each other and trying to figure out their sexuality, trying to figure out what's going on in their lives in general, trying to deal with their difficult pasts. You'll just fall in love with the characters and the story, and in no time. Next up, I read The Sun and Her Flowers by Ruby Kaur, which is a collection of poems that she has written on a variety of topics, from healing to grief, from loss to love. It's modern poetry. It's not for everyone, but I think it was a really great read. Next up is Again But Better by Christine Riccio, which is a book that literally changed my life. It's a story in which you follow a college girl who doesn't really have many friends, is pretty unhappy with her life because she's been just pleasing her parents instead of doing what she wants to do, and she decides to go for a writing course in England, tries to have fun, tries to have friends, but things don't go as planned. And I know what you're thinking. It helped me because of all the things that I just said it is about, but actually it also focuses a lot on independence and being yourself and doing what you love for yourself and not for anyone else, which is I think it's a great message. I think it's a really lovely message. Next up, I read, or rather listened to, The Things We Lost in the Fire by Mariana Enriquez, which is a collection of short stories based in Argentina. It's a pretty dark, horror-esque collection of short stories that talk about topics ranging from poverty through criminalism through abuse, and they also do feature LGBTQ plus themes. Next up, I read Every Heart a Doorway by Sinan Mogwai, which is part of the series of books of Wayward Children. Each one is a sort of novella of around under 200 pages, which is really quick to read or listen to if you feel like listening. It's about 5 hours of audiobook. So you follow a bunch of kids and teenagers once in their lifetimes and somehow come across and entered and lived in a world that has been perfectly tailored and suited for them. It is the only place in which they have ever felt like home, in which they have ever felt understood and accepted. But somehow all of them ended up going back, and because they are unable to live in reality anymore, because it does not suit all of their needs, they are sent to this wayward home where they have to get accustomed to living in the society again. Next, I read The Diary of the Bookseller, a book by Sean Bythell, which is a book in which he journals every single day working in a bookstore, a second-hand bookstore, in Scotland, in Wigtown, a small little community. It's a pretty fun light read that can help you get into the bookish spirit. Next up, I read Nimona by Noelle Stevenson, which is an amazing graphic novel featuring amazing illustrations. I don't need to tell you more about this graphic novel other than there's a supervillain, there's a superhero, there's a sidekick of the supervillain, and you follow them as they basically try to ruin each other's lives. Do I need to say anything more? It's amazing, it's funny, it's heartwarming, it's a really beautiful story. Next up, I read A Conjuring of Light by V Schwab, which is probably one of the best books, definitely one of the best books I read this year. It is part of a Darkest Shade of Magic trilogy, which I have talked about for ages, but it's set in a world where there are 4 different versions of London, each one based on a different type of magic. And there's a guy that smuggles something from the bad London, and that's all I know. Friendship, love, intrigue, adventure, magic, lots of amazing magic. Just please pick this up. It was amazing. I'm in love with this book. Next up, I read The Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo, which is an amazing fantasy trilogy featuring saving the world, featuring love, friendship, a girl who didn't really know she's the key to saving the world, set in a great world of grief-shivers, people with magical powers. Just go read it, basically. Next up, I read 2 books by Oscar Wilde, which is The Portrait of Dorian Gray and The Importance of Being Earnest, which are both really great books that to a great extent focus on morality. So basically the first one focuses on a guy who had a portrait of himself painted, and that portrait carries all the marks, all the wins, and he himself remains unchanged by time, by all these crimes. And the second one, I don't know how to explain it to you. It is very ironical and very fun. It's a play, and Oscar Wilde is basically one of my favorite authors. Classical authors especially, so would very highly recommend these 2. Next up, I read Down Among the Sticks and Bones, which is book 2 in the Wayward Children series, which I've already talked about. This one was definitely not as fun for me as the first one was, but still would really recommend. Next up, I read 2 books which are one of my favorite books of all time, and that is Children of Blood and Bone by Tommy Adeyemi and Children of Blood and Vengeance by Tommy Adeyemi, which is part of the Children of Blood and Bone trilogy. It's set in a world based in African mythology, which is so unique and so original, and it's based on a girl who's trying to bring back magic to the land of Orisha, a kingdom from which magic has been banished. It focuses a lot on social injustices and social divisions, and I think is a topic that we need to talk about. And so I think these books are not only very interesting because of the fantasy world they're set in that is absolutely mesmerizing, but also because of the social issues that they raise. Next, I read 2 books by Aldous Huxley, and that is The Doors of Perception and Brave New World, which are both books surprisingly having a lot in common. The Doors of Perception is a sort of written experience of what it was like to take this drug. I don't know how else to explain it, but if you're interested in this type of thing, if what I said is enough to get you interested in it, then you probably should read it because it was very interesting. A bit repetitive at times, but I would still very much recommend it. Very insightful, especially if you're interested in psychology. And the second book is set in a dystopian world. It's basically a classic. Do I need to tell you what it's about? Basically set in a world where being yourself is absolutely unacceptable. So society is made so that there is no place for individuality. It's all set up, a lot of psychological manipulation. It's very interesting. I'd say a bit boring, but I would still recommend it. Next up, I read The Storied Life of A.G. Thackeray by Gabrielle Zevin, which is a heartwarming, lovely book for every book lover out there. It's about this miserable guy. He owns a bookstore and his life is turned around where he's given a baby to take care of. It's amazing. It's lovely. It's about second chances. It's about hope. is about books. Next up, I read The Animal Farm by George Orwell, which is an absolutely fascinating book that centers around the Russian Revolution and draws a lot from that period of time, but can be applied to any communist society, any society in which the poor are exploited for the benefit of the rich. It's very interesting. It's very deep, very layered, very short, but very powerful, and I would really highly recommend it if you haven't tried it yet. Next up, I read a book by Astrid Uleli, and I can't find an English translation for this one, so maybe it hasn't been translated because I read it in Polish. It was a book about the life according to a cat, sort of how to live on the basis of how cats live. Just sort of meditation, relaxation methods. I don't know what it really was about, but it was pretty insightful and I learned a few things. I also learned that you should hack trees, so yeah, that's all I remember. Next up, I read The Prince and the Dressmaker by Wong, which is a graphic novel focusing on a guy who dresses up as a girl at night. Dresses up into dresses, and it's totally fine. And he gets himself a dressmaker. It's about the power of friendship, the power of family, of love, and acceptance. Next up, I read If Cats Disappeared from the World by Genki Kawamura, and this is a book that was really weird. It's about a guy that makes a deal with the devil that if he makes one thing disappear from the world every day, he will get like 1 day of life. It wasn't the deep and poignant book that I expected it to be, with lots of reflections on life and love. It was more of a fun, entertaining read, but if you count it as such, I guess it was... No, I didn't like it. Next up, I read the autobiography of Maya Angelou, which is I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. It is a very insightful biography into her life, into her growing up. Very interesting first book in her 7-part series, I believe. Next up, I read An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green, which is book 1 in, I believe, the duology. It's set in the modern world, mostly in New York. It's about fame, about trying to figure out who you are and not let fame get the best of you or the worst of you. It features a lot of talk about friendship, about love, mostly about fame, but also a lot about aliens and foreign life on Earth. It was really good. It's really good. Next up, I read The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, which is a very insightful book and one that can help you realize what your true destiny is and can help encourage you to follow your dreams despite what everyone else is telling you and despite the fact that it may take a while to get there. Next up, I read The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, which, as you all know, is a book that I really love. I read it in French just to get the best experience of it, and it was really mesmerizing. It's a very beautiful book about everything in life, all the sorrows and miseries and all the ups and downs, and I think you should really read it. Next up, I read Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell and illustrated by Faith Erin Hicks, which is a lovely book centered around Halloween and centered around love and friendship, and it's about these two characters that are trying to make one of the characters talk to the true love of his life or something, but it doesn't really go very well because they're working on a pumpkin patch. It's very cute, very adorable, and I would recommend it for the Halloween season, but in general, if you're in the mood for something adorable and fun. Next up, I read Mooncakes by Susan Walker and illustrated by Wendy Zhu, which is a graphic novel about a girl who is a witch and her old crush friend who suddenly comes back into town, and he's a werewolf and he is in a lot of trouble, and they sort of work together to try to defeat this devil demon thing in the woods and solve the mystery of what is happening and why is there so much evil suddenly. Next up, I read Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas, which is a great Halloween read, but also great read in general. It's about a boy who is trying to prove to his whole society, to the whole family of these magical people that can talk and communicate with ghosts, that he is worth of his position despite being transgender. And it's a whole story about acceptance, about love, about family, and it has a really great magical world, so I would really highly recommend it, mostly for Halloween time, but in general, it's just a very fun, adorable book. And then I read the best book of 2020, and that is The Invisible Life of Addie Larue by V Schwab, which I don't have with me, unfortunately. If I did, I would hug it very tight and not let go. It is a mesmerizing book that is basically like music to your ears. It's the best thing in the world. It is beautiful, and it talks about art, it talks about love, it talks about everything in life. It follows a girl who has been living for centuries because in the face of a boring, oppressive life that she was leading in this small village in France, she decided to make a deal with the devil and trade her relationships for the possibility to live forever. And by trade her relationships, I mean that everyone who meets her forgets her. It's like poetry turned into prose in the best possible way. It is mesmerizing. And nobody can hype it up enough. I mean, seriously, whatever you've been hearing about it is true. it's the best book ever. The next book I read is The Vegetarian by Hansen, which was a very disturbing but also very eye-opening book about the society in South Korea. South Korea. So we follow a bunch of characters who all have been having their problems, somehow connected either to the patriarchal society or to their past and relationships within the family, which are also based on patriarchal society. There's a lot of power play in it, and it is very disturbing, but if you want something maybe out of your comfort zone or maybe not, but it's very different than all of the books that I've listed here before. So it's just a very eye-opening and uncomfortable but interesting read. Then I read the short story How Much Land Does a Man Need by Leo Tolstoy, which is a really short yet powerful story about human greed, about the need to always have more, never be satisfied with anything you have. It's very powerful, very simple, but very beautiful. Next up, I read The Savage Song by V Schwab, which is a really fun, entertaining, light, but also dark book. It's a dystopian set in America where every act of violence breeds a monster. There are different types of monsters based on what sort of act of violence you committed. And there's a group of people who want to destroy monsters, and there's a group of people who want to rule the monsters. And you get two characters that are from both of these groups, and you see their friendship develop between them as they try to stop the truce from falling apart and save the world. And the last book that I read this year that I think is the last book I read this year is Evermore by Holland, which is book 2 in the Evermore series. I feel like I've done that movement, also it's getting there. I feel like I've done that movement so many times. And I finally actually read this one. It is set in a world where the time from your blood is extracted and the time is turned into coins, which is the currency. This is how people pay. It's about greed, it's about friendship, it's about love. I feel like all of the books are about friendship to some extent, but it really is. It's about trying to find your destiny, trying to understand your past and how it has influenced you, though in a very weird way and not applicable to humans, but still, I feel like there's a lot that we can learn from this book. It's a very interesting world, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it, and I would recommend this series to anyone who is in the mood for some light, fun fantasy that's going to entertain them for a while, and for a world that is pretty unique and darn awesome. So that is it for all the books that I read this year. This was a really challenging video to film. I hope it's not too long, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. As I've said, I've had a really amazing reading year so far. Not so far, but in general, it's just been such an amazing year. I've gotten to so many books that will stay with me for a long time, and I've had an amazing time with many books. I've also listened to quite a few audiobooks that I might talk about later. I really hope 2021 is equally or even better, if that's even possible. In total, it says I've read here 41 books. Doesn't really mean anything to me at all, but sounds like fun. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you got inspired to read some of these books. Let me know how many or what books you read in 2020 that will stay with you for a long time. I hope you're having a good day, and I hope you're staying safe. Take care and see you soon. Bye!